Sometime in the late 70s, I was part of a political campaign that saw my dad elected to the Hanover County Board of Supervisors. It was a spirited contest, as I recall, and our family did everything we could to support my father's ambition. We passed out campaign brochures and put flyers on windshields. You know, people love that. We learned to smile for reporters and to keep our mouths shut, and delivered yard signs to folks who requested them, and a few who didn't. But the thing I remember most about the campaign was the Memorial Day Parade. The parade was an annual event with marching bands, fire trucks, antique cars, floats for the scouts, and sleek convertibles and for the waving political aspirants vying for the precious votes of their constituents. You're all familiar with the type of parade I mean. And back then, the local races weren't as party dependent as they are today. People voted for the person they knew, or the person they liked, or in some cases, the person they had seen or heard. Well, Dad, always a thinking man, decided the best way to be seen, heard, and remembered was to make a splash in the parade. So instead of lining up a 74 Corvette or a 61 Lincoln Continental in which to parade, Dad borrowed a Farmall tractor and a flatbed wagon from a friend, and he created a never-before-seen entry in the parade, the Hanover Bluegrass Hayride. We piled square bales all around the wagon to keep us from falling off, and placed others to use as seats. And several bales hid the noisy generator we used to power the amplifiers and speakers, into which we plugged 2 guitars, an electric bass, and my temporarily electrified banjo. We must have had a dozen or more folks on that wagon. My mom and dad, of course, 3 brothers and me, a couple of cousins, a neighbor's kid, 3 girlfriends, and, oh, I've forgotten who else. And Grandpa Joe, bless his heart, drove the tractor that pulled us. We were quite the spectacle. Bluegrass, blue jeans, red, white, and blue flags flying, and a banner above it all saying, "Vote for Joe." We were loud and proud, and it would have been hard to miss that procession. And processions have long been a part of history, marking special events, celebrations, or solemn occasions. In today's gospel reading from the Liturgy of the Palms, we read about the entrance of Jesus into Jerusalem just before Passover, riding humbly on a donkey and surrounded by palm-waving enthusiasts. But what the gospel does not mention is that at the same time, in another part of the city, another procession was taking place. That of the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, arriving in the city. Every year at Passover, the Roman governor rode up from his coastal palace in the west to be present for the Jewish feast that swelled the population of Jerusalem from 50,000 to over 200,000. Mounted on a tall, powerful war steed, the governor was accompanied by rank upon rank of foot soldiers and cavalry, all arrayed in leather armor and helmets, carrying Roman steel. And with the sun glinting off of golden imperial eagles, and through the dust of marching feet, the silent spectators watched as this oppressive reminder of their subservience to Rome came to be among them. Meanwhile, on the eastern side of Jerusalem, in an almost comical parody of the Roman procession, Jesus entered the city on a humble donkey surrounded by cheerful singing people who were waving palm branches, the symbol of victory and peace. The fact that Jesus had to tell his disciples where and how to get that donkey or colt suggests that Jesus planned this event without consulting his friends. If his followers ever realized the overt sedition inherent in Jesus' behavior at this time, the gospel does not tell us. Nevertheless, the palm-waving mockery of the Roman procession was a rebellion against Roman rule by the chief emissary of the eternal kingdom of God. And I suspect it was largely wasted on the crowds with Jesus, and it is unlikely that Pontius Pilate ever heard about it. No mention of the event is made during the records we have of the ordeal of Christ's passion and death. The procession was never mentioned in evidence against Jesus as reprehensible behavior. So, what was it all about, this farcical procession? Jesus planned for his final return to Jerusalem. Music, singing, prominent display of plant material. It wasn't like he was running for local office. Why draw all this attention to himself unnecessarily? Was he perhaps simply fulfilling the 500-year-old prophecy of Zechariah? Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Lo, your king comes to you. Triumphant and victorious is he, humble and riding on an ass, on a colt, the foal of an ass. I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim, and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall command peace to the nations. His dominion shall be from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. I'm confident that Jesus knew what he was doing. From this point forward in his life, Jesus was in strict control of events. And while seeming to be a victim, Jesus stepped into the role of chief builder and engineer of the Creator God's plan to offer salvation to his created. Jesus knew who would betray him. And after the Seder, he went to a quiet place where the betrayal could take place. Jesus remained quiet before the chief priests and elders. He taunted Pontius Pilate before his court. Jesus knew what he had to do and carefully manipulated those around him to make it happen. Jesus did everything necessary to bring about his own condemnation and death. It was simply what had to happen. So one was a martial display of power and intimidation, the other a parade of victorious peace and hope. What began as two very different triumphal processions into Jerusalem inevitably clashed and conquered death, that final obstacle to Emmanuel, God with us. And for that, thanks be to God.